Lesson 87, Simplifying Expressions Using Properties of Algebra. These are things that you've learned in the past, but maybe you don't know the names. The commutative property is when we can move the numbers around and the answer is not affected. For example, if I add 5 plus 3 is the same as if I add 3 plus 5. The same happens with multiplication. 10 times 2 is the same as 2 times 10. Now, if you try with subtraction and division, the answers would not be the same, so it only works for addition and multiplication. Then we have the associative property, which is when we can do two things first and do then the third one. So I can add the first two and then the third one, or I can add the last two and then the first one, and the answer doesn't change. The same happens with multiplication. Now, this happens because, again, we're just adding all of them. It doesn't affect the order that I add them. And the same happens with multiplication. Now, the reason why we do this is for easy simplification. So if for me it's easier to multiply 2 times 3 and then times 5, or to multiply 3 times 5 and then times 2, then I can do that and it doesn't affect the answer, but it helps me do it in my mind. The reflective property is an easy one. It's just saying that A equals A. So if I have one thing and that equals the other one, then they're the same thing. So for example, if I put x equals 5, then I'm saying that x is 5 and 5 is x. The symmetric property is whenever we change sides. For example, I can say x equals 10 or 10 equals x, and it's exactly the same thing, because we're just changing the place where the x and the number is. The last one is called transitive, and it is that if A equals B and B equals C, then A equals C. Just look at it. If A equals B and B equals C, then I can say that A equals C, because they're brought together by the B. Now let's look at some examples how we would use these properties. If I have to simplify A in my mind and I just start adding these in order, then it's going to be more difficult than if I use the commutative property and I change the place and I bring 13 close to 87 and 49 close to 51. And the reason why I change them is so that then I can do associative and add these two and these two. So 87 plus 13 is 100, and 49 plus 51 is 100. Okay, what helped me see here that I could combine these two? Well, that I know that 7 plus 3 is 10, and I also know that 9 plus 1 is 10. So that kind of just brings them together and say, well, maybe that will be an easier way to simplify. And then 100 plus 100 is 200. And that's it. That's our answer. Notice how easy it is to add that by doing these different changes than if we try to do this addition 87 plus 49 plus 13 plus 51. All right, let's do the multiplication. In the case of the multiplication here, I can multiply 17 times 5 and then times 2. But to me, I know that 5 times 2 is 10. So I'm going to actually do the associative there and multiply 5 times 2, which is 10. And then 17 times 10 is very easy, is 170. So notice that I didn't even have to worry about what 17 times 5 is, because I did 5 times 2 first and then multiply times the 17. A lot simpler. And that's it. That's the lesson. So go do some practice and I'll see you in the next video.